Every AI search analytics platform that you've heard of, Profound, Peec AI, Scrunch AI, Searchable, all of them helps you track your brand's visibility inside AI responses. They tell you how often you show up, your average visibility when you do, your share of voice against competitors, and your sentiment score. All that data is foundational and you need it. But there is something that none of these tools help with today. None of these platforms will show you how accurately is a brand being described against a variety of prompts in an aggregated way for each of the AI search model. Imagine you're a company like Zapier and you position yourselves as an AI workflow orchestration platform. That's the category that you want to own. You've spent the last couple of years trying to position away from just another app that connects two different platforms, and you're moving towards something much bigger. Now imagine someone asks ChatGPT what are the best AI workflow automation platforms. Zapier shows up in the list thanks to its massive brand, but the description next to your brand name talks about Gmail to Slack integration like it's 2014, the pricing it cites is outdated, the positioning statement it uses isn't yours. It's a version of Zapier maybe from 5 years ago that some random listicle is feeding to AI responses. That's a problem. Your visibility is healthy, but your accuracy is broken. And right now, despite having these waves of AI search visibility tracking platforms, you have no instrument to measure this, let alone fix it. So I went ahead and built the solution using Peec AI, MCP, and Claude Code. This is what I'm calling a Brand Coherence Dashboard. It sits on top of the data that Peec AI already provides, coupled with a couple of other APIs and Claude Code, and gives you all of the insights about the accuracy of your brand against your positioning. And it doesn't just give you visibility on these misaligned AI responses about your brand, but also highlights the prompts against which it noted those insights. It gives you outreach opportunities based on what sources are describing your brand inaccurately, which are likely feeding into these AI responses. And all of this is being judged against the positioning that you provide in this section to this tool. So you're not just controlling the narrative of your brand, but you have an opportunity to track it and actually go ahead and fix it on relevant sources. And the fun part is I built all of this inside Claude Code in a weekend. In this video, I'm going to show you how this dashboard works, why measuring accuracy of your brand matters more than just visibility, especially for established brands. We'll also look at the backend engine of this dashboard so you can understand how everything is put together and what does the underlying logic look like. And at the end of this video, I'm going to drop the complete Claude Code prompt along with the reference HTML design of this dashboard, so you can go ahead and build this exact version on your own for the brands that you're working with. So let's dive in. Now before anything, let's have an actual look at this dashboard. What are the different sections that it provides information on, what it's tracking exactly, what kind of insights can you gain, and then what are some of the tactical steps that you can take for better AI search optimization. So I've built this using Claude Code, which I'm currently operating inside my VS Code, and this is the exact instance where I've built it. Now, one small caveat, and we'll talk more about this later on, but currently this dashboard, this tool is not pulling data automatically on a weekly or monthly or a daily basis from Peec AI. What this means is I have to run this with a script, with a small command inside my terminal in order to pull the data that we need to show you this product. So what I'm going to do here is open up my terminal right within this instance for Brand Coherence Dashboard and run the command one, which is npm run weekly, because we're currently running this on a weekly basis, right? And we can see it has loaded everything that we wanted it to load. It has fetched all of the information using our Peec workspace where Modash prompts are being tracked. Now, the second command that we need to run is going to be npm run dev. And that will give us the exact dashboard, the localhost URL with updated information. So now we have the localhost URL, which should have the updated information for us recently pulled from Peec AI. And we can now see this is exactly what we needed. So it's giving us, first of all, a diagnosis section. This is where we can see a high-level summary, right? So you can update this. I wanted this to be in line with a dashboard design that I built inside Claude, and I'm actually going to show you how I've built this step by step. But this is where it's giving me a very high-level overview of where we're starting. So it's giving us the data for the last 7 days because we have a weekly cadence set for pulling this data. So what we have here is a quick summary. Modash AI presence is stuck, not slipping. A flat 5.8 coherence score across 17 responses signals the brand isn't losing ground but weak scope and category definition. So we already know this. This is a problem that we're currently trying to fix over Modash. And if you don't know me, Modash is an 8-figure revenue Series A startup that I lead SEO and AEO for. And this is something that we're currently working on, which is to strengthen and reinforce the correct positioning of Modash in AI responses relevant to the prompts that we care about. So on the right hand side, it's giving us a score 5.8 out of 10. It's not slipping, it's not moving up, neither down. And compared to the last period, the previous 7 days, it has just been stagnant. Now what you're seeing here, comparison and branded, are basically two different classifications of prompts that we're tracking and using within this dashboard. I'll talk more about this within the prompt section. So what we have down here is where the score is leaking. So it's giving us an idea from a high level, what are the breakdowns of different kind of categories and dimensions where you can improve for your brand's consistency. So it's like when it comes to category related framing, for example, someone searching for influencer marketing platforms inside AI search, that's where your positioning is not so strong. Then you have scope. So feature level or capability level information. Is there outdated information in AI responses compared to everything that we've fed this tool related to the positioning and different features of Modash? So it says, again, you're weak there. When it comes to ICP, the kind of platforms that it highlights Modash as a solution for, which ideally should be e-commerce and even more specific Shopify stores, is somewhat better than the rest of the two categories. Then we have the differentiator in language. So key differentiators would be things like, what is the scale of our database? Or are we Shopify native? Do we have end-to-end influencer marketing? Stuff like that, right? Basically our USPs. And language is pretty simple. Is AI using the correct terminology based on how we position our product? So think about these as different dimensions. When we say accuracy compared to company's positioning, it's a matter of different things. It's like, do we have the right scope? Do we have the positioning in the right category? Do we have ICP properly emulated? And are our differentiators highlighted properly? Is the language accurate? All of that stuff compiles and compounds. Finally, on this page, it has a breakdown of different LLMs. I personally don't think it makes a massive difference because ultimately, most of these LLMs operate roughly the same way. There are definitely some guardrails here or there, but you don't have to worry about how to optimize for ChatGPT versus Perplexity. Your goal should be more of LLM optimization as a whole for accuracy. And at the end, it's also highlighting different prompts that are improving or worsening week over week, just to give you a high-level overview. Next up, we have the prompts. So as the language suggests, it's pretty easy. All of the prompts that it's pulling from Peec AI and considering within its set of tracking this data are listed here. Now you can see it's not just category related prompts, but a variety of different ones. And those categories, those varieties can be seen here. So we have category ones, we have comparison ones, branded and feature related. So for example, when someone searches for best tools for influencer marketing, of course, that is relevant, but so is someone searching for tools to manage influencer campaigns end to end, or Grin versus Modash. Now, of course, one can argue for the kind of prompts where you have your own brand's name appearing, it might not be as important because when someone says what is Modash or Modash versus Grin, most likely that's going to dilute the actual response of an AI search platform about Modash because now it's finding that information starting with our own website. Meaning when you search for something like best tools for influencer marketing, it's going to find those tools from maybe listicles, a variety of different software aggregator sites, and the description that we have of Modash on those sources will determine how we're represented in its answers. But the kind of prompts from a user that states the actual brand's name, in most of the cases, AI search will just start with the actual websites of those products, which of course usually will have up-to-date information and positioning. But again, like one can argue what kind of prompt you should actually be using. I like to use a mix and of course still heavily focus on the category ones. Next up, we have the section which is the most interesting and useful, which is outreach. To give you some context about this section, when I started working on this dashboard, my initial idea was that, of course, we can build it into an analytics platform that highlights what are the inaccuracies, what kind of prompts you're not accurate for, what are the features or maybe pricing that are misaligned compared to what you want it to be. But all of that leaves you with data and insights. You still have to take an action on it in order to fix it, right? So when I'm working with B2B SaaS companies, let it be Modash as my full-time gig or my freelance consulting on the side for B2B SaaS companies, I'm working on fixing these inaccuracies across the web. And that involves finding those sources and then reaching out to them, working with maybe an outreach agency or whatever it takes in order to get those sources to describe our product in the most accurate way possible. So when I was building this, I was like, can't we just incorporate that entire capability within this platform? Because Peec AI has that data already, right? It highlights what are the sources that AI is pulling citations from. That includes the mentions of your brand. So that's where I thought, what if, apart from just finding those prompts against which your brand is not being accurately represented, and of course different AI snippets, what if we also add a section that talks about your outreach opportunity based on those misaligned responses? As an example, for MoDash, if I look at this prompt, best tools for influencer marketing, it says exactly what's missing. So it says you're scoring low on category and scope dimensions. AI responses describe MoDash with outdated framing. Now, if I click on this prompt under outreach, it's going to take me to the prompt section. This is where it gives you a breakdown of different AI search engines, but more importantly, it gives you the exact sources it's pulling that information from. So what that means is you can exactly read what it says, what are the problems with the thing that it's saying about your brand, and then say, can I actually visit these pages and get them fixed somehow? So as an example, here we can see for MoDash, this is an actual problem, by the way, that we're dealing with. MoDash is being called a creator discovery platform. So we are an end-to-end influencer marketing platform, and that's the language that we prefer. But most of the internet has referred to us in the past as an influencer search or a discovery platform, as a platform that helps you find influencers. But we don't just help with finding influencers, we actually help with managing them, paying them, tracking performance, a lot of things. So we're an all-in-one influencer marketing platform. That's the language that we prefer. But I can see that AI search is not reflecting that accurately. So now if I open up this page from G2, which is one of the software aggregator sites, I can see why exactly this might be happening. So now that I have this page of G2 opened up, I can exactly just search for MoDash, and most likely it will have some resonance, right? So if we just read this blurb about MoDash, it says, among the highest rated platforms in the category, reviewed by marketing teams for its clean influencer discovery and campaign management interface. Now, as you can see, it's definitely one of those pages that are feeding into AI responses, and that's feeding into our inaccurate positioning being reflected by AI search platforms. We also know, of course, G2 happens to be one of the top cited sources when it comes to B2B SaaS as a category. So among Reddit and LinkedIn, G2 and other software aggregator sites have a lot of role to play in how any AI search model talks about your brand. So this is something that you would like to fix. If this is not accurate for your brand, go ahead and try to fix it somehow, not just on G2, but any platform, any website, any blog, any publishing site that has inaccurate mention of your product. So coming back to the platform again, this is like one of the things that I wanted to build into this dashboard. As of now, it helps you find those sources. And of course, you still have to do the manual part of outreaching, but you can take it one step further. You can say, I wanted to generate an outreach plan for me. Maybe it can write the exact emails. Maybe you can also just use Claude Code and have an outreach function built within this tool and expand its capabilities further. As of now, this is just what I'm working with, because highlighting the sources is good enough of a start for you to go ahead and fix it. And then the last section is, of course, positioning. This is where the positioning that you've given this dashboard will live for reference. So as of now, you can see it has everything that I've provided about MoDash. So it talks about the category, all-in-one influencer marketing platform. It shares the scope. And this is where you will find all of those different dimensions that we initially talked about in the diagnosis section, right? These ones, where it talks about the category that MoDash lives in, all-in-one influencer marketing platform. Then it talks about the scope, which includes many different features, capabilities of the product at large. So you can see, for example, the discovery function that we have, creator management, creator outreach, creator tracking, payments, and the Shopify integration. So it's a lot of capabilities and features merged together. Then we have the ICP, who exactly are we for, e-commerce brands, and more specifically Shopify, our differentiators, the language to use and the language to avoid, and competitor framing, how are we positioned against different platforms or solutions in the market. So this is the dashboard. This is the entire platform. As of now, it's only baking in specific prompts from Peec AI. So currently we have, I think, maybe more than 40 prompts that we're tracking for Modash. It's only pulling about 13 in total because other ones are just way too specific or way too brand oriented. Now that we've looked at the platform, let's go ahead and see how I actually built it. So I want to give you a very rough and casual look into how I usually get started when I'm trying to build something like this using Claude. So I'll typically just start a Claude chat, and I have Whisper Flow. So this is just a massive prompt from me where I'm just talking to AI. I'm just talking to Claude. So I'm saying very casual stuff, right? Hey, I use a product called Peec AI. They've recently released their MCP, and it's an AI search platform and stuff like that. And we have like a good set of prompts that we're tracking, etc., etc. And I want to build this dashboard. So again, it's like very casual, like I'm talking to a friend who is tech savvy and an amazing developer and product manager, right? So initially, I just want Claude to help me plan for this because I still have this rough idea in my mind, but I don't know exactly the sections that it should have. What are the different capabilities that the dashboard should have? So this is where it's giving me a scoring mechanism. For example, here it's talking about all of these different set of prompts that you might want to include or exclude, like we already have. It's talking about different dimensions that the scoring should be done on. So it's like accuracy, scope, ICP, exactly what we looked at, and a couple of other things, right? And then it's asking me a bunch of different questions. I'm answering those. So it's a lot of back and forth. Once I have clarity on what this should look like visually, the envisioned product version of this solution, then I'm going ahead and asking it to build some sort of a wireframe for me. Again, this is not just for this exact solution, but for anything that I'm building using Claude. So here's what I've done is just asked Claude to build a wireframe for me, keep it interactive so I can actually see how different screens will look, different data points that it should have, the gaps and opportunities, positioning, exactly the kind of stuff that we looked at. Now, I looked at this wireframe, this UI. It should work fine, as in, of course, you don't want it to be like a world-class product if you're just using internally. But I didn't really like the UI. It just still felt like a very outdated version of a dashboard. So I just went ahead and asked it to use some skills and go ahead and build a new version of this using a UI UX skill. So it went ahead and built this, which I really liked. Again, when you look at my dashboard, the one I just showed you, of course, it doesn't look like it's the ditto copy of this, but it's roughly the same, right? Where we have this overview heading, giving us all of the insights on the diagnosis section. Then we have prompts, outreach, positioning. Now, again, all of this is just mock data. It's just highlighting what the end product should look like. So it's giving me a visual view of what I should build, what it should look like ultimately. And this is where I'm just carrying the conversation. I'm saying, okay, so this looks good. I made a couple of changes, asked it a bunch of times to make some tweaks here and there. And once I have the platform dialed in, that's when I'm asking it to give me ideas about what do I need other than just the Peec AI MCP? Do I need other APIs? Are there other things that I need to configure in order to run this automatically? So it gave me a couple of ideas. It just laid out that exact structure for me. And typically when I usually have everything that I need, I just go into Claude Code if I'm using it inside maybe VS Code or maybe not the terminal. I hate that one. But Claude Code can also be used as a desktop app if you want. For this one, I was using it inside VS Code, and I would just fire up an env file, put all of the APIs that it asked me to. Also, I just downloaded this exact wireframe as a HTML. So again, I just asked it to turn it into an HTML that I could download because I wanted this to be pretty much very close. So I added it here as a reference.html. And finally, I again asked Claude to give me a very detailed prompt with all of the API keys that it knew that I had access to inside my env folder file, and this HTML, of course. And finally, it gave me that detailed massive prompt, which I just gave to Claude Code. And then it baked everything for me for a couple of minutes, maybe for about 1 or 2 hours or so, and built this exact thing that I wanted it to build right here that we've looked at already. So that's roughly my workflow, right? Manually just juggling between Claude Chat and then using Claude Code to actually start building the thing. And by the way, you can also just use the plan mode of Claude Code. You don't have to use the typical, Claude Chat. I just use it because it's just easier for me because I have a couple of skills that I want to use. and a couple of other things that I wanted to reference. Plus, I don't always like chatting with Claude in my VS Code. Like the interface doesn't just look right with all of the code. So I only get to it when I have clarity on what do I want to build. But what I mean here is inside VS Code, if you're using Claude Code, you can just click here and ask it to turn towards plan mode, right? I typically just run with bypass permissions when I'm building, but of course, plan mode can help you clarify and solidify your ideas before you actually get into building part. So now I want to give you a very quick idea of how this Brand Coherence Dashboard weekly data flow is working. What are its different segments? So we have a set of inputs, then we have the pipeline, and then finally it generates an output for us. And I know it looks overwhelming, but if you're using Claude Code, all you have to do is just figure out these inputs and know what you want to build. All of the technical stuff, Claude will handle it, I promise. So here in the input, I, of course, had the Peec AI MCP. You can get it very easily if you already have an account and you're using Peec AI. They released their MCP recently, which means you just have to copy a specific URL, which is the MCP server. If you don't know what MCPs are, it's basically a way for LLMs to communicate with external tools. And again, you don't have to figure out how to use Peec AI MCP. They have a documentation page on this that talks about how to set it up for a variety of different CLIs. So if you're using Claude Code, you just head on to this section and run this command in your terminal, and you can just start using it already. Or if you still feel like what I'm talking about is just technical language and you're not very savvy in this stuff, you can literally just copy this exact documentation URL, give it to Claude, and ask it to figure out how to use this Peec AI MCP. All right, so back here in the inputs, we have Peec AI. We figured out the MCP. Then we have to use an API of one of the LLMs. So in this case, you can use OpenAI, Anthropic, or anyone else. Essentially, why we need this is to classify the prompts into different categories, score them, diagnose them. So LLM is being used not just for creating the content that you see within the dashboard, but also for reasoning and creating these different clusters of prompts that it can use to finally score them for your brand coherence. Then, of course, it also needs a positioning spec of your company from you. This is where it will take the category, scope, ICP, language, differentiators, basically those 4 to 5 different dimensions that we looked at in order to score your positioning against. After that, you have to give positioning spec of your brand, where you can just upload maybe a PDF that you have with positioning or writing guidelines or messaging guidelines. Essentially, this should come from your product marketing team, ideally, or maybe if someone on your team is careful about how your brand is represented by your customers, by maybe the sales copy, by the marketing team. That is the person usually who has these resources. If not, you can again just build them up using Claude and just chatting with it. Just describe it, how you would want your product to be positioned, and just create a document. So this is where these positioning specs, these insights from your team, from your company, will be used to create those dimensions that we looked at. If you remember within the dashboard, we had this section. So it's highlighting the category, the scope, ICP, differentiator, language, based on the positioning, docs, or information that you provide to the dashboard. Finally, it also needs a list of competitors, so it can exclude the sources that it highlights for you to reach out to and fix your positioning, because of course, no competitor is going to help you fix your brand positioning if they have a mention of your brand. Next up, we have the pipeline. This is some technical part, but again, it talks more about how the backend engine is working. So essentially what I've just walked you through is the platform pulling the last 7 days of data. So prompts and responses from Peec AI. Again, you can change this cadence to maybe a daily pull, a monthly pull, depending on how frequently you want to track this data. Then it classifies the intent. This is being done by Anthropic or OpenAI or any other LLM API that you're using. So this is where we're creating those categories of branded and comparison and, category related prompts. So we're just creating these segments of the prompts. The same APIs of the LLMs are going to then score your AI responses, right? How accurately Modash is being represented on those 5 dimensions. So again, category, ICP, differentiator, language, and maybe something else. And essentially what they're doing is creating these, evidence-driven insights, numerical quantities, right? For each of the LLMs. So it's saying basically, hey, when someone says, give me the best tools for influencer marketing, that's where you have a score of maybe 6 out of 10, or maybe 8 out of 10, because your positioning spec is exactly in line, or maybe not in line, or maybe totally off compared to what AI positioned you as. So essentially, these models are looking at how you describe your product, then it's comparing AI responses about your company, and then giving a score against each of the prompt that it pulled from Peek AI. Next up, the dashboard is giving you a set of sources. So it's attributing the sources with lowest scores where you have an opportunity to find and fix the language that is being used inaccurately for your company. For example, in this case, we looked at G2, right, where Modash was highlighted and was heavily inclined towards the creator discovery feature rather than talking more about our other capabilities in an aggregated way. And it's going to help you find those sources, join them to low scoring, and then finally filter out the competitors. Again, because we don't want to reach out to competitors, most likely they're going to say no, even if we pay them money. And then finally, it gives you a snapshot of the entire data using SQLite. So SQLite is basically the database where we're going to store the prompts, the scores, the dashboard as a whole. So you can just go back, not just looking at the latest 7 days, but also, let's say, 3 months from now. Essentially, why we need this database is to store the information, the actual progression of data. So you can see maybe 3 months from now what the trend has been looking like in terms of your brand coherence progression. Of course, you don't have to use just SQLite. You can use any other kind of database service. You can use Postgre, you can use MongoDB, whatever really suits you, right? And then finally, in the output, with everything taken into account, with all of the processing done, it's giving us a brand coherence dashboard that we looked at. You can potentially also create a Slack summary if you want, right? That wouldn't be hard. You just create a Slack app and it will just paste all of the weekly insights into your Slack channel. And of course, it gives you a weekly outreach list. Again, you can maybe just drag all of this data into an email that gets delivered to your inbox on a weekly basis. And perhaps you can just forward those to your outreach agency or a freelancer that you're working with. In any shape or form, you just basically get these insights, which are currently living in a dashboard, but you can also create these alerts in a channel of your choice. So we looked at how the data is flowing through this brand coherence dashboard on a weekly basis, right? What are its mechanics? Now let's look at how this is being built. So again, based on everything that I've already told you, the chat that I've shown you inside Claude and Claude Code, you can see what we've given this model is basically a wireframe, right? The HTML design, because I just wanted to build the exact thing that I've already visualized inside Claude. I'm giving it a massive prompt. Again, I don't write this prompt on my own. Once I have clarity, and Claude has helped me just solidify my ideas, I'm just asking it to give me a detailed prompt that I can just give to Claude Code. I know it sounds very lazy, but again, it's actually smart because I'm using AI to just create what I wanted to create. Then we have the env file. This is typically where you put all of the API keys. It just is for security purposes. Even if you just want to give Claude all of your API keys within the actual prompt, I personally don't think it poses a massive security risk. So feel free to do that, in my opinion. Then we have Peek MCP connection, which is set up using auth. And then the positioning docs, right? The PDFs, typically you can just get them from your product marketing team, or you just have it as a marketing material, right? So the wireframe, the prompt usually take longer to build, but once you have all of these things ready, you just give it to Claude Code. It will read the wireframe, the prompt. It will just look at the project as a whole, check the endpoints of all of the APIs, and just run end-to-end tests to see everything is working fine. Again, it just feels like magic. If you haven't used Claude Code, just get on the bandwagon. It's literally nothing but just a couple of hours of learning. But once you have it, it feels like you have a genie. You can just ask it to build whatever you want. Finally, what we get is an astrostatic site. Again, if you are not very tech savvy, it might seem like I'm speaking alien language, but it's nothing crazy really. Astrostatic site just means it's a web framework that renders static HTML. It just creates websites, right? Essentially, that's what it's doing. So it's giving me 4 different dashboard views, different panels that we looked at, and it's hosted on Vercel, right? That's like the easiest way to do it. Again, feel free to host it however you want. Currently, I'm just running this on my local device. But again, I want to deploy this to share this with the rest of my team. And if I do, I'm going to be doing it on Vercel. Next up, it's of course using the SQLite database. That's where it's keeping all of the snapshots, scores, and evidence. Then we have the weekly pipeline script. This is basically the cron job. Again, I'm using some jargons, but essentially what this means is we have to get the data from Peec on a weekly basis. In this case, of course, you can do it on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, whatever really suits you, but we need that data fished on a weekly basis. So how do we do that? If we had the API of Peec AI, right, which they offer on their enterprise plan, so I currently don't have access to it, I'm using the MCP, I wouldn't need this step, but since I'm using the MCP, if I were to deploy this and have this completely automated and not require me to run the terminal commands that we did at the start, then I would need to use a GitHub action. Again, if you're not familiar with what a GitHub action is, it's basically a continuous integration of some sort that lets you automate your build, test, or deployment pipeline. So meaning, if I am currently running this inside VS Code in my Claude Code, and I have to open up terminal every week, and I have to run those commands that I did, npm run weekly, npm run dev, I can avoid that by building a GitHub action, and that will do these commands for me. Even if I don't have Peec API, I can just run this exact dashboard automatically on a weekly basis. Alternatively, there are also tools that you can use to do this. So platforms like Railway, Pipedream, Render, all of them should be useful in this case and get the job done. So finally, what we're getting as a result is everything that we looked at, the dashboard, the data accumulated over time. We can look at snapshots in the past, and we can also, of course, as I mentioned, build it into different channels to get those summaries right into our Slack channels or inbox. Now, this was maybe about 4, 5, 6 hours of focused work, but again, I just built this on a weekend, so you can too. Now, how do we use this dashboard? Now, we've exactly looked at different sections of the dashboard of the actual platform, but here's a quick workflow. So number one, you run the dashboard, you get a baseline, and you don't need to fix anything yet. You look at the numbers, so you start measuring what your brand coherence looks like. So we move on to the diagnosis part. This is where we see which dimensions, which search engines, AI search engines, which sources are contributing to that brand coherence thing. Where exactly is the misalignment happening? Then in the next step, we fix it by number one, fixing the content on your own website, because that's like the source of truth for your brand. So start there. Just make sure that if you're trying to fix your positioning statements, your messaging of your brand, features inaccuracy, pricing inaccuracy, anything on the web, the task should start at your own website first. So prioritize that and then move on to other third-party sources. The web at large, your brand footprint on the World Wide Web, and of course other relevant sources excluding your competitors. Number 4 is, of course, you keep track of this, see the progression. Did the score move? Did you see any improvement? If not, you keep trying, you build this as an actual strategy. Now, a key step here to keep in mind is, number 1, of course, don't skip the step 1, which is looking at it as a baseline. So you need to know where exactly you're starting, because you could be looking at the score and say, hey, we have a 6 out of 10 score, which is really bad, right? You can interpret it however you want, or maybe an 8 out of 10, which is amazing. What you have to do is say, where exactly were we when we started? What is the benchmark? So if you started 4 out of 10 and now it's like 6, it's a massive improvement in my opinion, right? On the other hand, if you have everything dialed in from day one and there's not a lot of opportunity for moving the needle, you're already like 8 out of 10. Of course, like, in that case, maybe even 8.5 would be a decent uplift to celebrate. So just set a baseline before looking at numbers in an absolute way. And the other key insight is this isn't a measurement tool, right? You have to use it as a content strategy. So you have to think about this like this. I am trying to figure out what is off about my brand on the web that I need to fix, but I have to actually go ahead and then fix it. So the actual score that you see is just the trigger for you to get started, look at those insights. The actual part is the outreach list, and for you to build an outreach program around that, so you can look at that and say, let's get to work. Now, there are 2 key concepts that I want you to understand before we wrap this video up. And of course, I'm going to give you the actual prompt and all of the details so you can build this exact version on your own using Claude Code. Number 1, why this is important. When you think about measuring visibility, that's only one part. That is important for the brands that are getting started because they simply don't have visibility in AI search and they want it, right? They want to start gaining traction within these new models. But when it comes to more mature companies, the companies that already have a web footprint about their brand, they have a branded search volume, they have been around for years. What matters more than visibility is going to be coherence. Is their brand being described properly? So if you think about it on a timeline, when you are in an early stage, your priority is, are we even showing up in AI search? With existing tools, you can just track to answer this, right? And you can see the progression over time. That is, of course, the biggest priority when you're just getting started and you have absolutely no visitors or traction in any shape or form from platforms like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude. But then as you grow and you get into a growth stage or become more of an established brand, your brand maturity grows. You're at a point where you have to start thinking about both visibility and coherence. So you're visible, of course, but framing might be inconsistent. And this is where both metrics become a need. So once you're visible, the question becomes, how accurate is what AI says about your brand? Again, if it's sending traffic to the website, they have a different expectation because they look at a picture of your brand, which is 3 years, 4 years, even 6 months outdated in this fast-paced environment. They're not gonna convert because their expectation and what they're seeing now is a mismatch. And of course, on the other hand, if AI is constantly just giving the wrong information, you might be losing literally deals on the table because there are capabilities in your product that AI does not recognize, and that makes your customers lose interest. They just feel like they're not capable of solving their pain. So for brands that are really category leaders, the priority, even above measuring or growing visibility, becomes improving coherence, accuracy of their brand. So the idea is, once you're already cited, you need to worry about whether you're cited as the thing you want to be. So this exactly means that for established companies, they should be paying a lot of attention and putting time and effort to improve their brand coherence, the accuracy of their brand in AI search models. I have a couple of examples to hit this point home. So imagine you're a company like Zoom, right? What you are right now is, let's say you're calling yourself a unified communications platform, right? You do a lot of things. It's not just a video calling platform anymore. It's a workplace, phone, contact center, so many more things, right? So companies are now using you as a revenue accelerator platform. And what AI still says is maybe you're just a video calling tool and nothing more. So this means it's a coherence gap in the form of the dimension being AI describing one feature when the company is now a massive platform with so many additional features and capabilities. So that's like the dimension that it's limiting is going to be the scope, that the feature, the capability of your platform. Another example would be MailChimp. If at this point you happen to be an all-in-one marketing platform, that's what you want to be recognized as, not just an email one. You now have email, landing pages, SMS, automation, right? But AI is constantly calling you, the best email marketing tool, right? But nothing else. Then again, it becomes a limitation in the form of you not fitting into the right kind of categories that you want to be a part of. Of course, you would be dominating email marketing space, but AI is using the noun, the brand, with only one category and missing out on everything else. So you're trying to actually escape the email marketing one because you want to grow into a broader marketing tool, but AI is not letting you do that because the entire web, at least 80% of it, is describing you only as an email solution. Then we have Zapier, right? The example that we looked at initially at the start of the video, where let's say if you call yourself an AI workflow orchestration platform in today's economy, when AI workflows are the thing, you don't just want to be called an automation software. And now you have agents, AI actions, and tables, and so many more things. But again, AI could be looking at you and saying, hey, you can connect two apps together, right? So in this case, it's about differentiator dimension, which basically means AI is citing your strengths, but they're the old kind of strengths that you don't want to capitalize on anymore. They don't resonate, and you're in a completely different era where you want AI to recognize Zapier as a AI agent or agentic solutions sort of a platform, while it's only looking at it as a linear workflow building solution that it used to be. Now imagine all of these brands, right? Zoom, MailChimp, Zapier, and the list goes on for established companies, right? ClickUp for project management, Asana for project management, Canva for design. All of these platforms don't have a visibility problem. They have an accuracy problem, right? If they want to improve their ROI, their maybe revenue, traction, whatever you want to call it, from AI search, if they really want to make that channel work for them, they should rather work on improving their accuracy than pure visibility growth. Showing up for more prompts should not be the priority over showing up in the right way for relevant prompts. All right, so we've looked at everything. We have looked at the concepts of why this is important, when it becomes important. We've looked at the actual build of the solution that we've built, the stages, how the pipeline works, how all of the infrastructure operates within it. And now I'm going to give you the exact solution that you can use to just plug and play with your Claude Code and build this thing for yourself. So here, if you see within my Claude Code instance, the same one that I was showing you, I've asked, can you turn the latest version of this dashboard we currently have running into a markdown file as a prompt that anyone can plug into Claude Code and have this exact version built for themselves? Put placeholders for the API keys at the top and the rest of the prompt separate. I'll attach the reference.html file with the prompt, so keep that in mind. So of course, I'm going to give you the reference HTML if you want to use the exact same design. So you can use that and plug your API keys, which is pretty much just an LLM, so Anthropic or OpenAI, and use this markdown file, right? This exact markdown file that I'm going to put into a doc, which you can get from the description of this video, and run this prompt through Claude Code, and it will build the thing for you in a couple of minutes. You can head over to the description of this video and it will give you a form, which if you just submit with your email, the markdown file, the prompt should be accessible in a Google Doc file. My name is Usman Akram. I'm a B2B organic growth strategist that works with companies to help them grow with traditional SEO and AI search optimization. If this is your first time seeing me, I create more content on LinkedIn, and I also weekly put these videos on YouTube. So feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, say hi. My profile is in the description. Until the next time, have a great day. Bye.